da nam kaže. Ana, please.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be back here today to discuss the film incentives. I honestly don't think many of us expected to be back here so soon. I think, Dantana, you estimated that we would be in the European Union before film incentives were passed, but here we are. So to Minister Sertic, the Ministry of Economy, to the Serbian Film Commission, and everyone here who pushed for the law, thank you, and congratulations. And when we met last time, I spoke quite a bit about what film incentives would mean for Serbia, and I don't want to bore you with much of that again, but I want to reiterate briefly why it's so important that the government get the implementation of this program right. A credible film incentive program will attract foreign productions to Serbia. It's as simple as that. Foreign film productions mean job opportunities for the domestic film industry in the same way that foreign direct investment means job opportunities for domestic employees. When Fiat invested in Serbia, it provided thousands of jobs for Serbian citizens, and it developed the entire automotive industry in Serbia. And foreign film productions will do the same. They need domestic crews, they need domestic caterers, dry cleaners, hotels, makeup artists, and so on. And that's the domestic film industry, and those are the companies that are going to benefit from this program. So the film incentive program means bringing in new investors to Serbia. It means higher tax revenues and more tourists. It means new job opportunities for small businesses and local entrepreneurs. And it means finally realizing the potential of an industry that has been underutilized for far too long. I think this is the best way for Serbia's domestic film industry to grow. I don't think it's possible for Serbia to have a robust film industry without international productions. In fact, I'd expect that many people who want to work directly in film need to leave Serbia to do so. But with film incentives and by attracting international productions, it will be possible for people who want to work in Serbia to stay here. And while I do believe the new incentive program is cause for us to celebrate, I also believe it's an important moment for the government and the film industry to ensure that the incentive program becomes an effective way to stimulate the economy. The government needs to do more than simply pass the film incentive decree. It needs to implement it, and that's crucial, because the Serbian government has, in its recent history, failed to properly implement a previous tax incentive program, and it was a major blow to the country's credibility as a film destination. Serbia needs to regain that credibility by making sure this program is effective, by following through on its promises, and by promoting itself and this film incentive program to the international community. And I do believe the government is serious this time about making sure the program works, and that's what I've told the 2 foreign producers who already have expressed interest in Serbia's new incentive program. But if the government wants this program to bring the economic benefits that I know it can bring and that we know it can bring, then the government needs to fund the program properly. It needs to appoint an implementing body with the technical know-how and capacity to ensure the program runs smoothly. And that's the immediate challenge for the Serbian government. And I sincerely hope that they follow through, because without proper implementation, the incentive decree will become irrelevant. And in addition to implementing the film incentives, I also argue that it's imperative for the government to develop the film industry by protecting intellectual property rights and stopping piracy. Piracy costs the movie industry billions of dollars. It harms legitimate businesses, it decreases investment, and it costs jobs. Piracy finances criminal enterprises and terrorist organizations, and it promotes criminal activity. Ultimately, film piracy will hurt the Serbian economy because it's going to prevent movies from being made here. To date, Serbia has relied on smaller productions rather than the huge blockbusters, and it's those smaller productions that are most threatened by piracy because movie studios can't afford to take risks on those types of movies. So piracy is a threat to the global film industry, and it's a direct threat to Serbia's developing industry, and that's why the government needs to act. Serbia has one of the highest rates of piracy in Europe. An estimated 69% of software here is downloaded illegally. Film and music industry representatives estimate that more than 95% of the movies and music downloaded here is done through unauthorized channels. That is an enormous amount of theft. And even if it's just a fraction of that, that's still unacceptable. Honestly, can anyone here think of another industry where it's the norm for the vast majority of a product to be stolen? I mean, imagine if half the people on an Air Serbia flight didn't pay for their tickets. What would happen to Air Serbia, and how long would it take the government to act to prevent people from stealing airline tickets? And so unfortunately, it's very easy to steal content online. And I think that people around the world suffer from a misconception when it comes to piracy of film and music. We think of it as a victimless crime if we consider it to be a crime at all. And beyond this, I think that there are two other factors that influence people's downplay of the seriousness of piracy. First, pirated content isn't limited. For example, if you have a car and I steal your car, you no longer have a car. But if I download a movie illegally, it doesn't prevent anyone else from having it. And since I didn't take the movie from somebody, I didn't really steal it. And then secondly, even if people realize that piracy isn't a victimless crime, many people believe that the supposed victims of piracy are rich. People's level of sympathy for the movie stars that lose out on a couple of dollars because they've downloaded the films illegally is non-existent or minimal at best. The movie stars have enough money, Hollywood has enough money, and we don't have any money, so what's the big deal if we steal some movies? So what we have is an environment where it's really easy, with minimal risk, to pirate content and a lack of recognition that it's wrong to do so. And that's a problem. And so the apathetic attitude and misperception about piracy is definitely something that we have to combat. The reality is that piracy is theft. There is no gray area there. Piracy is theft. And the victims of piracy, and there are victims of piracy, and it's not just the big movie stars that we associate with the films. If you've ever watched the credits after a movie, you'll know that they seem to scroll on forever. And it's those people that are the victims of piracy. And as I've mentioned, the domestic film industry is made up of many businesses, like Angelica's business. And those are the people that are hurt by piracy. It's the little guys that are going to suffer. And a study for the Institute for Policy Innovation in the US found that piracy results in the loss of more than 46,000 jobs in the motion picture industry and more than 94,000 jobs in other industries that would have been created otherwise. And when movie companies lose out on such a substantial portion of their market, they make fewer films, and the independent production companies are driven out of the market. So that means less investment and fewer jobs for everyone related to the film industry. And piracy is something that we all need to work on, in the US, in Serbia, and in every country. But given Serbia's incredibly high rates of piracy, there is plenty of room for improvement. The government needs to take more action to combat piracy and IPR theft and actually prosecute people who further the illegal distribution of pirated content. As with the incentive program, it's the implementation that's crucial, because the government has a fairly strong legal framework to protect IPR, but it actually needs to implement its own anti-piracy laws. Right now, nobody believes there's a risk to supplying or downloading illegal content because intellectual property rights aren't sufficiently enforced. The government has made some progress. This is not to say there hasn't been progress made, but piracy remains rampant, and it continues to harm Serbia because ultimately investors just want to go where their rights are respected. And this isn't all on the government. I do believe that there's a role for the industry to play. Although the black market for films is significant, I would argue that people prefer not to pirate films. And maybe I'm naive, total possibility there. But I think that people, when given the opportunity, would prefer to do something honestly rather than dishonestly. And the fact that illegal films are more accessible than legal ones is a problem. And I'm not trying to justify the fact that people are pirating movies here or put the onus on the industry, but I think one of the solutions would be to make it easier for people to download films legally. And one way to do that, which we have in the US and which people have mentioned, is through businesses like iTunes, Amazon, and Netflix. And Netflix isn't in Serbia, so for people who aren't aware of Netflix, it allows subscribers to access thousands of movies and TV shows legally from their computers and televisions. And despite the fact that Netflix just ruined my grade point average in college, I consider it to be a gift of the gods. Netflix is hugely popular in the United States. I would argue that it's actually the US's preferred method of procrastination. Netflix accounts for 37% of US internet bandwidth during peak hours. That's a third of US internet. And studies show that Netflix and similar websites cut down on piracy because they decrease the need for people to download content illegally. And in fact, since 2008, when Netflix began online streaming and I began losing more and more hours of sleep every night, BitTorrent, a popular service for pirating, has seen its share in bandwidth fall from 31% to 6.3% in the United States. And so the internet is changing the way the film industry works and the way people view films. Even without piracy, there is no doubt about that. And in this respect, it's important for the government and the industry to recognize these market realities and adapt so that legitimate businesses can flourish. If people want to watch movies online, then create an infrastructure for them to do so legally. In Serbia, as we've mentioned, people can view things on demand through their cable subscription, and that's definitely a step in the right direction, but there aren't ways for people to download movies legally. So make it possible for people to access movies legally online. Make it possible for people to pay to watch movies online, either by making PayPal fully functional or through some other service, because right now that's not an option. In Serbia's legal cyber market is underdeveloped, but clearly the internet users here are very sophisticated, and if people know how to pirate, then they should know how to pay. And so in addition to implementing Serbia's anti-piracy laws, I think these steps will go a long way to reducing piracy and protecting the film industry. And that will create jobs and improve the economy, both globally and here in Serbia. I do believe that the Serbian film industry has enormous potential. We wouldn't be here if that weren't the case. The government has definitely taken an important step to promoting the industry through the new incentive program, but passing the law isn't enough. It needs to be properly implemented. A credible film incentive program will strengthen Serbia's domestic film industry, and similarly, implementing strong IPR protections and creating a robust cyber market will protect Serbia's domestic film industry, because piracy isn't just affecting the big Hollywood productions, it's crowding out domestic films in Serbia. But despite these challenges, I'll remain an optimist. I believe the government's committed to the implementation of this film incentive program, and I believe they're committed to implementing a strong IPR framework. I believe the government is committed to making the Serbian film industry as successful as possible. And that's why when I leave here in 6 months, I will look forward to seeing, through legal channels, of course, the many films that are going to be made here in the future. Thanks.
Yeah.